Hello, I'm Joel Hargis with the Florida Aviation Network, here co-hosting Plane Time today. And first of all, I want to announce our affiliates that are out there listening today, literally across the country. That would be Bill Stuhl and Joe Weiner in Jacksonville with the Civil Air Patrol, Glenn Sims in Lakeland with the Civil Air Patrol, Paul Adrian and John Weber in Leesburg, Florida with EAA Chapter 534. Barbara Phillips in Orlando at EAA 74. Robert Jex in Orlando, he is with the Orlando FSDO. Vicki Sherman in Ormond Beach with the Civil Air Patrol. Keith Phillips, good friend, in Spruce Creek with EAA Chapter 288. Deborah Van Truren in Titusville, and she is with the EAA in Chapter 866. Brenna Wright in Sanford with the Naval Air Station and Sanford Information Headquarters. Bill McClung in Tampa with NASF and the Florida Aviation Network. Michael Minner in Tampa with the Tampa FSDO. Dennis Hayes in Fort Myers with the EAA. William Billy Hadaway in Birmingham with the Birmingham FSDO. Sam Gross with the Tampa Fast Team. Barry Simmons in Inverness with EAA 1674. Tommy Dieterman in Live Oak, EAA Chapter 797. John Liccardi and Michael Kutchpa in Fort Pierce at EAA Chapter 908. And last but not least, Steve White in Brooksville with Chapter EAA 1298. I also want to promote a new blog that one of our Florida Aviation Network has started, and that's John Tenney, and it's on the $300 hamburger. Used to be a $100 hamburger, but it's, everything's gone. So anyway, I want to welcome everybody for being here. We're in beautiful Orlando, Florida today, flying in the clear, and I have a great guest who's just loaded with information, and that's Mr. John Detrick. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. And as you know, on Plane Time, we like to focus on maintenance and safety. That's one of our, that's really kind of our mantra, if you will. And I know in talking to you, you have quite a background. You're a Florida boy, aren't you?
Yeah, and some of that background's legal.
All right. Well, we won't go there. But grew up in the Brooksville area.
That's correct.
And so let's just start at the beginning. What got you interested in aviation?
I have always been interested in aviation. Since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I've always been looking skyward, looking at airplanes. When I was 16, we lived close to the Brooksville Airport. I used to hike over there, used to help work on airplanes, wash airplanes, pump gas, whatever it took. Right. Typical aviation story, right?
Worked on the line a little bit, and you have a private pilot certificate.
At least, yeah.
Instrument rated.
Yeah.
Do you have your ATP?
No.
But you've got some background flying jets commercially.
Yeah.
But you got into that kind of in a roundabout way back when there used to be an onboard flight engineer.
Yeah. After high school, I joined the Marines, and I became an avionics technician. After that, I came out into the civilian world, worked for a couple of different companies. One of them, people may have heard of, called Boeing, as an avionics technician.
I think most people have heard of Boeing.
Yeah. I was part of the team that did the special systems installations on both Air Force Ones.
Really?
Yeah.
You told me that was an interesting story, and you had a big non-disclosure on that.
Yeah, they made us sign, under pain of death and giving away your firstborn, not to disclose anything about the program. And then a couple months later, there's a full color page, 3-page spread in Popular Mechanics
on what you did on Air Force One.
Yeah. So after that, I became an A&P. I went to a school in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Went through that. After that, still stayed as a mechanic. Worked at some Part 145 repair stations. That's the big, heavy overhaul. Did that for a few years. got a position as something called a flight mechanic on a VIP charter airline. And at that time, I thought I knew a thing or two about maintaining airplanes, but that was an eye-opener.
Really? And why do you say that?
Well, because now I actually got to ride along and see how they worked.
Ah,
And that was
that's a cockpit job
yeah, how the guys in the pointy end used the stuff.
in the pointy end.
Yeah, that's what I like to call it, right? Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you got to know which end goes forward, right?
Yeah, the pointy
So,
end.
yeah. So I saw the guys in the uniforms that never got dirty, and I'm like, I can do that.
Ah,
So I became what was known as a professional flight engineer.
all right.
Now this is a position, the third guy in the back for those old airplanes that still had that.
And those were DC-8?
Yeah, this was the DC-8s and the 727s for this
Okay.
particular airline. So this professional flight engineer was traditionally a mechanic who became a flight engineer because of their expertise with the mechanical systems, and also because using their airframe and power plant certificates, they could sign off maintenance items.
Ah, so yeah,
yeah.
a double win for
Double
for
win
the
for them,
carrier.
yeah.
So I want to back up just a couple steps because we got some time here today. We got a couple segments, and you flew for a VIP airline. Any name dropping you could give us on that?
Fair amount of Hollywood, rock and roll stars, some royal families.
Nothing
Run-
any more detail on that?
Let's see, we flew Jimmy Buffett around for a bit.
Jimmy.
Yeah, nice guy, nice guy. A lot of Hollywood people. Elizabeth Taylor comes to mind. The girls in back loved having her. A bunch of Hollywood stuff. Saudi royal family.
Wow. So, and I bring that up because some people think, the maintenance side of it isn't too glamorous, but gosh, if you get to rub elbows with Jimmy Buffett, I mean, come on, how much fun is that, right?
Yeah.
So, flight engineer, and you did that for a while.
I did that for roughly 15 years, I would say,
Wow.
on a variety of different aircraft, the 727 and the DC-8. I ended up going to a cargo carrier
All right.
called Air Transport International, who had a very large fleet of DC-8s. We flew all over the world doing stuff that you wouldn't believe.
You hauled some odd stuff, I think you said.
Odd stuff, yes. Anything, race horses, Shamu a couple of times.
Hauled Shamu.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. How many
Yeah.
people do you know that's flown Shamu?
Yeah. Cash into the Middle East during the war.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, just stuff.
Okay. Well, we probably better stop right there with that.
But, we saw the end to the three-man cockpit. So unfortunately, the company ATI had a very robust upgrade program. I took advantage of it. Next thing I know, at a grand total of 300 hours, I am in the right seat of the DC-8 doing touch and goes.
Made it into the pointy end.
End of the pointy end.
Clear to the front.
Yeah. And when we retired the DC-8, I transitioned to the 757/767.
All right. So, and that's all background, but not really the reason we wanted to sit down here and talk today, was it?
No.
Because after that, you eventually made your way to the Lakeland High School of Aerospace
Yeah,
basically.
I stopped flying. Basically, I got the short end of a seniority stick with a merger, a couple of health issues, and I said, well, I've done this for 20 plus years. I've checked that box. It's time to move on. I went into the mid-level management of another couple of charter airlines. Really wasn't happy with that. Got into the training side with another airline, and that kind of opened my eyes to I can impart some of this knowledge.
Right. That's good.
So I did that with this airline. Came back to Florida, looking around, casting around for something, and I got picked up by a local community college to teach their avionics program.
Oh,
Now I ended up teaching their A&P program, and eventually became somewhat in charge, as much as the public school system would allow me to.
Okay.
Yeah, and then and that actually was the Central Florida Aerospace Academy, which kind of segues nice into, Gene Conrad, the previous guest, with the Aviation Center for Excellence and Sun and Fun, because they help support that. I worked with them a great deal regarding that support and what we were doing, teaching the high school and adult students with that program.
And so what was your role there at ACE at the high school?
Well, it was really at the high school. I was, in addition to being a teacher, I was also the people coordinating the liaison with the FAA, writing the manuals, ordering supplies, just doing everything else, acting as a substitute when required, things like this, interacting with the school system and the parents to ensure that we met all the regulatory guidelines for the FAA and for the Department of Education, all that kind of trivial stuff like that.
So let me ask you, how did you like working with the kids?
Working with the kids was great. I love working with the kids, and not just the kids. I also love working with the adults who want to be aircraft maintenance technicians. I love to impart that knowledge. I love to get them started on this career path. Can be a fairly rewarding career path if you choose.
Yeah, I run a remote series for the Aviation Network called Teaching Youth Aviation, and we do field stuff out and talk to different groups, and God, it's just heartwarming, isn't it?
It is.
Because the kids that are there, they're into it.
Yeah.
Most of them. I mean, they're like,
Yeah.
whether it's, and some of them focus on different things, but most of them have, they're doing a build, right? They're working on airplanes. They got their hands on. They're putting in rivets and doing the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So I think it's very rewarding, and to be there doing that full time at a kind of the highest level, because really Lakeland, that's kind of the gold standard in almost the country.
For that type of education, yes. For the way that the public school systems do it, yes, it is. However, I was feeling a bit constrained. I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to make changes, and I was looking for avenues to do this. And fortunately for me, a mutual friend contacted me and said, hey, there's this new outfit that's opening up. They're opening up a new aircraft maintenance technician training school here in Lakeland. So I met with the owner.
And that's for adults.
That's for adults.
Okay.
And this is part of the International AeroTech Academy. Is a flight school located on Lakeland International Airport on the south side. It's a very robust Part 141, FAR Part 141 training organization for pilots. It also has a Part 135 charter certificate. So they have a couple airplanes to fly, charters with.
So they train pilots.
Yep.
They run charters.
They also have a Part 145 certificate, which now can work on larger aircraft, not GA, business jets, larger jets, and what have you. And this is run by a gentleman by the name of Steve Markoff. He's a fantastic guy. Another ex-airline guy. He's got a whole background. Maybe someday you guys could interview him. Interesting character.
Okay.
Him and I got along. We talked about where we wanted to go with this new 147 school, and so I agreed.
And so, for common people out there,
for common
like
people,
myself,
common people,
145 is the heavy stuff, or getting there.
That's maintenance. That's a maintenance. That's a maintenance repair facility that is regulated by the FAA under FAR Part 145.
Okay.
There's different, we all know the FAA's got many, many different organizations that they have to oversee and different regulations. Part 121 is the airlines, Part 91 is general aviation. Part 147 is the regulation that concerns aircraft maintenance technician training and schools.
All right. That's 147. That's an A&P school is operating under 147.
Yeah. So not anybody can just up and start a school and say, I'm going to teach aircraft mechanics.
Got to be certified.
Yeah, got to be certified. If you want to teach people to be a car mechanic, not so much certification, right? So, but for us, there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do to get certified, inspections and writing manuals and all of this back and forth. So we have a new school.
So, and just to slow down there just a little
Yeah.
bit. So they give you, quote, the overriding curriculum, and then you write the syllabus.
Exactly. They give us.
Explain the difference and.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me say that currently FAR 147 regulates every aspect of the school.
Okay.
For instance, how many students you can have. The number. I mean, you have to specify the number of classes you have. Every piece of equipment has to be identified. All of the processes and procedures for record keeping, assessment, grading, attendance. I mean, the detail that the FAA gets into is incredible.
For the curriculum.
For the curriculum. So the FAA gives us the curriculum, what we must teach.
Okay.
All right. For instance, by the way, 147 is changing in September.
And
So the old rules are going out the window. Like, we used to have to teach wood, dope, and fabric. Who does wood, dope, and fabric as an A&P mechanic now? Now, it's a specialized shop, right? So,
Oh, yeah.
So we no longer have to do some hands-on stuff like that. Now, we have to talk about it, but not hands-on. But they introduce new things, such as human factors, which we must now do, talk about, and there's certain things that the students must do. So the FAA tells us what we must teach, and then we prove and demonstrate to the FAA how we're going to teach it, and that's the syllabus.
Right.
We will spend X amount of time doing this, we will give this assessment, the students will perform this, this, and this to ensure that they have the adequate skill set required to take their exams.
So when you say these new rules are going to take effect September 2022
September 21st
of 2022,
this year, right around the corner.
like a month from now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does that impact your school? And share the good and maybe the bad of that.
Well, no, it's good. It's all good. It's just like there's birthing pains, but it's all going to be
Change
good.
is always
Yeah.
painful.
In the past, the FAA regulated how many hours must be spent in each program. When I say program, the AMT training is divided into 3 segments. We have general, which is, just as the name implies, the general stuff.
And I just want to stop there for a minute. AMT, Aircraft Maintenance Technician.
Yes.
We don't call them mechanics anymore.
We're trying to get away from that. The FAA for a number of years has officially called them aircraft maintenance technicians, even though the certificate still says mechanic. Because when we talk about mechanics, the first thing that comes to mind is some guy that's, knuckle dragging, grease under their fingernails, cigarette dangling from the mouth, unskilled. And the honest truth of it is that aircraft maintenance has progressed far beyond that.
Yeah,
Far beyond.
for sure it has.
Yeah.
And so, anyway,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk more about this in the second segment, but there is a huge demand for AMT, Aircraft Maintenance Technicians. Huge.
Huge.
And
yeah.
and we'll deep dive that.
Yeah.
And so these changes. So one of the things you talked about, and of course we do this in pilot training, is the human factor. Was that the terminology?
Human
you used?
factors,
The
yeah.
human factor. And so for a pilot, obviously, I mean, we run through our own personal psych profile before we take off on any flight, right? We pre-flight ourselves. Talk to me about that for the AMT.
Okay. Yeah, for general aviation, you're right in that you do a personal assessment. For the airlines, that's actually been a formal program for at least since the mid-90s.
Okay.
Formal education, it's covered in your initial training, your recurrent training, and it's an ongoing process as well. So the FAA is now bringing this into the aircraft maintenance technician side.
A&P school.
A&P school. Now, the airlines have brought this into their environment for quite some time, by establishing things like work hour rules and things like this. And really bringing the focus of safety and analyzing how and why we make errors in the maintenance field. 80% of all aircraft incidents actually start from a maintenance incident. So something happened, and then the crew did what they did and were led astray. And we talk about, in human factors, something called the Swiss cheese model. Now, we all know what Swiss cheese is, right? It's the cheese with the holes.
Lots of holes.
So what happens when all those holes line up?
Stuff falls through.
We have a clear path to disaster. But if at any point one of those holes is misaligned, and that's where human factors comes in,
Catch it.
we can recognize, hey, we're not following procedures. Hey, we're tired. So-and-so is distracted because he's going through a divorce, or his kid just got a broken arm or something. But we recognize these factors now on the aviation maintenance side, hoping to stop that chain of events. And now this is going to be a formal educational process in the new curriculum.
Well, that sounds like a good thing to me.
It is a very good thing.
Because, I mean, like I say, on the pilot side, we're taught that literally lesson one, you know,
Yeah.
to look hard in the mirror, right? And on the maintenance side, just like you say,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was 80%. But
Yeah, so on the airline side, they've introduced this into their maintenance programs, because on the airline side, the maintenance programs are considerably more formal and regulated than on general aviation.
Sure.
But now this is going to be brought down to the general aviation level. And hopefully it will prevent some incidents or accidents on general aviation side as well.
So, are you guys ready for the change here in 30 days? Or?
We're working on it. I'm working closely with our primary maintenance inspector. I mean, there's always, you know, a little give and take. Anybody that's dealt with the FAA, you know, there's always a little give and take, manual writing back and forth.
And so,
Yeah.
let's, primary maintenance, PMI.
PMI.
And that's an FAA employee
Yes.
that visits you semi-regularly, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
How regularly?
Anytime they choose.
Right. They just show up.
Well, they can. They just walk in the door, and it's happened.
Sure.
Just, you know, they come in for a chat. How are things going? Look things over. You know, and it's sad to say, you know, it's a requirement, because, you know, human beings, if we can get away with it, we will.
So how long has this school been in place? How long have you been there?
Okay, I've been there a little over a year. Now, I started, I should say, I didn't start the process, but I moved the process along for the initial certification. Now, the initial certification happened last October, when the FAA finished their inspection process, granted us a certificate of operation, and our first class started in November
Of last year.
of last year.
Well, that's pretty new.
We currently have 3 classes rolling right now. I have authorization for a night class. I have the numbers for a night class, if I could just find an instructor, which kind of moves into that shortage of skilled maintenance technicians, because they're just not there. Every operator out there is screaming for them. Every AMT school out there is looking for instructors. But
Wow.
I mean, so the airlines are looking for AMTs, general aviation's looking for AMTs, the schools are looking for AMTs, and there's just not that much of a pool to pick from. And by the way, this is not something that's just specific to aviation. All the skilled trades in this country are suffering the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
Every one of them.
and again, we're going to deep dive that a little bit more. So how long does it take to get through your program, get an AMP?
Our program will take you about a year and a half. Now,
Okay.
depending upon holiday schedules and things like this.
A year and a half. So from day one, 18 months later, you got your AMP, or do you still got to work under an AMP?
No, you will probably have your airframe and power plant certificates. I said a year and a half. It's really kind of more like 16 months.
Oh.
So the way that our program works is you will start with general. That's, like I said, the general basic stuff. When you're finished with that, you will be given a certificate of completion. Go take the written exam for that. Move into airframe. We'll do all the airframe courses of instruction.
Gotcha.
Get your certificate of completion, take the written exam from that. Now take the results from both written exams and go see a designated mechanical examiner, take your orals and practicals. So now you're dangerous because you now have an airframe and certificate, and you are now a legal aircraft technician.
You got a license to learn, don't you?
Yeah. So now in our program, you are now going to be in power plant, and it's the same process. You'll finish power plant, take the written, go see the DME, and now you will have both airframe and power plant.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And jobs are literally buku.
Yeah,
right now.
we have an agreement with an aircraft manufacturer who will interview and hire before students even start.
And is there any reason we can't say who that is?
No, we can. It's Piper.
Well, there
Piper,
you go.
Yeah.
And so for anybody that's local, and we got a lot of Florida folks watching, I mean, you can do that in Lakeland. Piper's over Vero Beach.
Vero Beach. Yeah.
I got that right. So the message is, you know, in less than a year and a half, you can get your A&P and a job
And a job.
right here in Florida.
Right here in Florida. And we are also talking with other operators, some airlines who I can't name yet, but for basically the same kind of deal, a flow-through agreement for the maintenance side and on the pilot side for our pilot side of training. But I'm here to talk about maintenance, so it's a flow-through agreement for young mechanics or new mechanics to go to these airlines. And we're also talking with another major manufacturer who, while they're not in Florida, are pretty close, and to do the same thing.
A major manufacturer that's pretty close
Yeah,
to Florida.
yeah. So we're starting all
You're
these
not gonna let me
relationships.
guess, are you?
No, I'm sorry, but we are working on flow-through agreements, and this is something that's going to be new in the industry, is doing this kind of thing.
And do you ever, I mean, do some of those people, could they get right on with an airline and get placed that way?
Yes, they can. The airlines now are literally hiring people fresh out of school, something that they have traditionally not done.
Right.
But the shortage is so critical. It's
Well, and you know, that doesn't surprise me because the airlines, I mean, you don't have to watch the news on any given day and them not talk about, from the passenger standpoint, what a nightmare it's been this summer. And it's pilots, and they always talk about pilots. Sometimes they talk about ATC.
Yeah.
Even ATC is looking right now.
everybody.
But there's a lot of that's maintenance, folks, because if the maintenance isn't completed, the plane doesn't fly.
Exactly.
I mean, and we don't have the best safety record of travel in the United States via airlines. I mean, that's the safest way to travel.
It sure is.
But that is a litany of people that make that happen. So, well, I'll tell you what, John, and we've just touched the tip of the iceberg on this thing. And in our next segment, we're going to go into the real opportunity for the younger folk or older folk. You don't have to be 18 to do this. I mean,
No, you don't.
You can do a career change. And
sure
so
can.
we're going to deep dive that. And so I ask everybody, please stay tuned here on Plane Time and join us for the next segment in just a few minutes. I'm Joel Hargis with the Florida Aviation Network. We'll be back.